Welcome to the previews of Cinema One and Only number 17 from April 10th to April 16th. This is our third Easter week. Once again, we start out with the deep astrology from our Leo King. Highly recommend you listen to this. It's amazing, and his advice seems to be right on for everybody. He does speak about David Wilcock during his talk this week, so I added a short little clip of what he's talking about with Kevin Spacey. And one of our spirit speakers, Gerald Clark, is being interviewed by two astrology experts and speaks about some of the astrology similarities to the Anunnaki and some of the archaeological Sumerian evidence that he's been interested in. And after all that deep thought, you need about 3 hours of good relaxing guitar music, which is what you're listening to right now. And then we'll wake you up with a little Bill Haley. Bill Haley used to work on WKNE in Keene, New Hampshire, where I'm originally from. All right, moving on down. John Sebastian. In Keene, where I'm originally from, my dad had a music store there on Armory Street for many years, and John Sebastian used to come down to his store and eventually ended up being a 3 or 4 year friend that we would see quite often during the summer months when he was going to a camp up in Sullivan, New Hampshire, just outside of Keene. And he eventually became a camp counselor there, and we, meaning my dad, myself, and a radio disc jockey from WKBK in Keene, Herb Howard, used to be our drummer, and one particular night he couldn't make it, and John Sebastian sat in on the drums to take his place when we worked there. So he kiddingly refers to my dad and our band as first time he ever played out in public anywhere, and credits my dad to a lot of inspirational advice that gave him his courage to get into the entertainment aspect, standing up in front of people and entertaining. So this week we sort of get into the history of John Sebastian and the Lovin' Spoonful. Last week we introduced a few of his songs and his appearance at Woodstock in 1969. Over the years we've still kept in contact with him. His contact with the Lovin' Spoonful and the Mamas and the Papas. This is his appearance at Woodstock. Okay, getting on with our playlist, we get into the usual Saturday sessions that we pick up from CBS This Morning Show, and then into some classical gas, Chet Atkins this time. A number of people perform that song. These are favorite guitar instrumentals by Dan Holloway that I would love to learn, working on them one at a time. Then we come into our spiritual section, starting off this time with Isolated Life in Africa, followed by some Sumerian artifacts. This has musical background, but allows you to see a lot of the artifacts that have been found recently, in the last 10 years. And our spiritual song, because you're going to hear Steve Cioccolanti again this week, talking about Donald Trump and the victory of the Hungarian presidency, or Prime Minister rather. Then Gerald Clark, part 2 and part 3 of a series we had started last week and we'll finish up with next week. And for those that aren't familiar with the Anunnaki, this is part 1 of a series that's going to be by Matthew LaCroix, who did the Anunnaki series with Gerald Clark when we started the year out back in January, late December. We have a great controversy between the Bible and the Book of Mormon. A good thing to watch, especially if you have negative views about the Book of Mormon and you haven't caught up in the last couple of months or even the last couple of years. This would be a good catch-up. You might decide to change your mind about a lot of things that you thought were true and not true. I know I did. And oh, I love this song. I think that's the way he's going to come back, but that's my opinion. And we have more of the top secret government information through Corey Good, some stuff about Nibiru. This is chapter 3 of Zachariah Sitson's book, The End of Days. We've been following that. I think we have 6 chapters so far, so new violinist. Back to the Woodstock, finishing up some more of the appearances of the Who, Jefferson Airplane, Air Supply. Some of my favorite songs to listen to from the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Johnny Cash, Lovin' Spoonful. Then we get into the theater presentations, silent Our Gang movies, Betty Boop, animated shorts, serial trailer of the serial The Black Hawk. That's a DC comic that was popular in the 1940s during World War II. This is the week that we are giving our respects to the bombing in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This is the week that they committed that awful atrocity. The Invisible Man trailer, another trailer. Donald Duck cartoon. They used to throw cartoons in along with short subjects before they'd show the main feature. And the main feature in this selection is Shirley Temple in the movie Stowaway from 1936. Not very many movies were made in color back in that time. And this is in color. Duffy's Tavern, this is a radio show. Couldn't find another Duffy's Tavern movie, but we're looking. Now we sort of zero in on Mickey Rooney for a while. This is a movie from 1937, so you can see him as a young boy. And this one goes up to 1953, some 20 years later, 15 years later. You can see how he's grown in his acting ability. Give you a little relief with Daffy Duck. This is actually just, it's not an animated cartoon, it's a news article about Daffy Duck that was on CBS Sunday morning. And we'll give you another silent Our Gang. These are about 20 minutes long. Nice little stories. See what life was like in the 30s. Newsreel from the 40s. During World War II, I believe. Maybe late 30s. Instead of a Little Rascals short, we have a movie that stars Alfalfa when he was a little bit older after he played in the Little Rascals. So 1944, he's a teenager in this movie. Mickey Rooney's death at the age of 93. And we give you another Mickey Rooney movie, The Healer. There are a lot of other other stars in there that was equally as good. And in our series, winding up the series section with Sherlock Holmes, one more edition for this week. I think we have more coming up. This is the radio show from 1946. Then we get into the music section, which is kind of short this week, with Smiley Burnette and the Sons of the Pioneers. That's the only two shows in that section. Before we get into the Charlie McCarthy radio show, and this is from the years when Abbott and Costello were on the show. So we follow this up with an Abbott and Costello radio show. Make references on this show to the movies that we had last week. Africa Screams, and there was another one. Two more Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy radio shows. This one's an hour-long show from 1956. They do an imitation of the movie Ben-Hur, calling it Ben-Him. This is a little clip on the radio with Jimmy Stewart and Edgar Bergen. And in the history of Edgar Bergen, we started last week. We have three more parts, part 4, 5, and 6. And this is a 4-part ventriloquism lessons. If you want to learn how, listen to this. They're about 7 minutes each. I think they were on records that were about 7 minutes each side. And we have Darcy Lynn Farmer again, checking in on her and her one-night stands at various theaters and Madison Square Garden appearance. And for those of you that may have missed it, we have all her appearances from America's Got Talent season 12, so you can catch up. This is about 22 minutes long. See the whole thing. Jeff Dunham, we check in with him again this week. And we always wanted to see who the great Lester was. They make references to him. All the great ventriloquists give him credit for being the one that started it all. So I thought we'd check in and see who he is. And this is another funny ventriloquist, introducing you to Ray Austin. And another one, Arthur Prince. And another one, more famous, Paul Winchell with his Jerry Mahoney and Knucklehead Smith. From 1956, they had a TV show that was on every Saturday. And we have a half-hour Lucy show that Paul Winchell guest starred on. It's in color. You might like to give that a peek. And in our ventriloquist section, we introduce you to Keith Harris and Jay Johnson. This guy is funny. Darwin is a monkey, and it is so funny to see what he does with that monkey. I got one at one time when Jesse was just a baby, our youngest, and I used to try to imitate what Jay Johnson did with this puppet monkey. You've got to see it. It is a must-see. Pete, another comedy act. Ray Allen. And then Jimmy Durante Show. This is from 1955, so I imagine it must be a TV show. And then a radio show. Gets us into the radio section of old-time radio with the Comic Weekly Man. That brings us into the Westerns with Hopalong Cassidy. And we're going to skip Hoppy first and do a Gene Autry radio show. We have a couple of other radio shows from Gene Autry this week. Hopalong Cassidy trailer is of the very first movie of Hopalong Cassidy. And this is the week that we're going to show that movie, along with the 30th movie. So we'll skip down from 1935 down to about 1940, and you'll see two Hopalong Cassidy movies this week, and a TV show from the 1950s. And while we're at it, we have about an hour and a half celebration of Gene Autry's centennial. It's a featurette with a lot of Gene Autry songs and clips from his movies, followed by a Roy Rogers TV show, followed by a Roy Rogers movie. And then we jump back to Gene Autry again for Chapter 4 of Phantom Empire, and back to the radio for 2 more Gene Autry radio shows. And that brings us to another Comic Weekly Man show from 1953 with more Roy Rogers, Hopalong Cassidy, but also includes Flash Gordon, which introduces us into the science fiction part of our playlist with the radio show Flash Gordon. This is episode 17. And in the movies, chapter 5 of the serial Flash Gordon. Back to the radio again with Space Patrol. Sticking on the radio for a selection of Tarzan half-hour radio shows, as you can see, from April 1952. This is a continuing series, Tarzan and the Fires of Tar, and another half-hour Tarzan show from 1952, May 8th. I think there are 2 a week. No, that's one from the week before, or the month before. Well, anyway, this is Tarzan and the Diamonds of Ashur. This is episode 17. So if you go back 17 weeks, you'll find episode 1. I should say 16 weeks. 17 including this one. Chapter 2 of Tarzan, The New Adventures of Tarzan. And again, we have 2 episodes from the TV series, The Epic Adventures of Tarzan. These are in color. Then jumping into our Superman section, the Kinks. This is my story, Superman from the 40s. This week we introduce you to the unsold pilot that came after George Reeves' death. They tried to start another TV series, The Adventures of Superboy, but it wasn't accepted and they never produced it, although they have a book out with all of the planned storylines that they were going to do for the first season. But it's not bad. Superboy to Superman. This is a comic book that's available on record. This is the record. And another of the Fleischer cartoons. Preview of Superman the serial, Batman the serial. This is a little short from the story of George Reeves. Ben Affleck starred in it, and in this particular part he's playing Superman. This is a true account of what actually happened to George Reeves. Then we celebrate the 75th anniversary of Superman, Batman, and we have Wonder Woman's turn this week for introducing her character. And we also threw in an extra one this week. It's the last one they're going to do in this series. It's called Doomsday. And we have a story of Batman and Robin, the origin. Part 1 and Part 2. And these animated shorts are satires on the different characters, Batman, Superman, the Justice League. They're funny, fun to watch. And then some of them are Marvel characters, Captain America, Thor, Star Wars. How they think these movies should have ended. A little fun time. They're all short episodes, 5 to 10 minutes long. And this week we're repeating episode 4 for those of you that missed it last week. Next week we'll have episode 5 and it'll be continuing. Chapter 5 of Captain America. And chapter 2 of The Lone Ranger Rides Again. Now we get into the Lone Ranger, Green Hornet, and the Shadow. They seem to run together on the radio, TV, and in the movies, so we sort of put them together on here. And we're going to transition over to the television shows with the Three Stooges, a color version, and some previews of 1960s westerns, another episode of Mickey Rooney's Hey Mulligan, some Amos and Andy shows, followed by Topper. Then we get into the serials again. Chapter 5 of Smiling Jack, Chapter 7 and 8 of the Mystery Squadron, and Dick Tracy Returns, Chapter 2. Some previews, Humphrey Bogart movie. This movie introduces Leonard Nimoy for the first time to the world. He stars in this movie, Kid Monk, 1952. Then the radio shows. Whatever Became of Larry Buster Crabbe, played Flash Gordon. Our Miss Brooks, My Friend Irma, Bob. Old Venture, this Humphrey Bogart radio show. And this week, for the first time, we have war news from 1943. See how this goes. And keeping up with King Solomon Mines, some spiritual movies, the story of Ruth. And this is part 1 of the Jesus of Nazareth movie, and we end this week with our Lakeland video short film that we usually end with. And that's it for this week. We don't even have family albums for anybody to watch this week. 7 years ago, I don't think we were taking movies. So let's see what's going on in the world of cinema, one and only. Okay. Keeping track of the North Pole, for one thing. We set this again today so that it is aimed right at magnetic North Pole, and we'll see if it moves from week to week. This is first week we've done this, so if you think you missed anything, you didn't. This is what we're currently watching. Jupiter Ascending, The Great Showman, Snow White, and the Huntsman, Hercules, Dracula. Meant to show these earlier. Alright, starting off with the dailies. We are up to Season 6 of Smallville. As you can see, we're out of Lois and Clark now, and we are into the Wonder Woman for the second feature of our dailies. one disc a day from each one of these. This is second season of Wonder Woman. Linda Carter. It's Wonder Woman. And then our third is Superboy, the second season. And the third season. And season 4, which completes Superboy. And for the fourth feature, still Buck Rogers. Then on the weekends, this week is Volume 1 of Star Wars Clone Wars. Then the second feature, the X-Men. This is the 5th week in a row that we have X-Men. And this week we show the theater version of Superman 2. We showed the Richard Donner version of Superman 2 before, and there is a difference. This is a longer movie too, about a half hour longer. Alright, ending up with Star Wars Episode 5, back to the story of Luke Skywalker. We've only seen Episode 4 of this storyline. Alright, that's it for this week, gang. We'll be back again next week with continuing our Cinema One and Only. We hope you're enjoying it. If you have any comments, please feel free to make them underneath. I'm new at this, but we're going to try to improve each week. All right.